Welcome to the Family Office, planning for the people who matter most.
Look, I think the biggest story that a lot of people aren't facing or aren't looking at right now is the fact that HP just announced again is expanding or is expecting to cut another 4,000 to 6,000 jobs. So many. I mean, I have stuff here I was going to share. Or we was going to talk to you about just the job losses. Obviously, 2025 has reached 1.1 million as of October, already higher than 2024's total of 761. So if you just count October and not the rest of the year, so no November, no December, and you look at job cuts, this is a scary thing. I don't think I ever remember seeing job cuts this big in a long time, right?
You're talking about domestic cuts as a whole, right?
Yeah, U.S. job cuts. That's almost 2 million job cuts. This was 2 million job cuts. And for most, a lot of government jobs because Trump was elected. There were 761,000 last year. Okay? And then when you look at it, California is 158,000. That's one of the highest. Texas, 46,000. Florida, 22,000. New York, 81,000. Obviously, DC, 303,000, government stuff. You're just seeing job cuts everywhere, all over the United States. Not so much the central part of it, but mostly the tech stuff, a lot of the tech stuff. And there can just continue. 20,000, Amazon, Microsoft, all these guys. And you still got Michael Burry out there pushing that AI bubble. And he's trying to pin NVIDIA as the Cisco, right, of the dot-com era. Job cuts are huge right now because you also saw Tri-Loan or Tricolor. It was like the biggest subprime auto lender just filed for bankruptcy. So you see a lot of these consistencies are starting to happen here. Job cuts to me are the most important thing because that's people not being able to pay their notes, their credit card debts, and debt's already high anyway. So that I think is a bigger thing and a bigger issue looking forward to going into 2026 to see if are we going to really actually have a recession year, an active recession year. And inflation's still high. It went up by 0.8 or something to that effect. Where are you at, Len?
So when you look at job losses from the outside, it's very easy to throw numbers around because it's just statistical data points. What I try to think about is the husbands and wives that are mothers and fathers or young professionals that are trying to make a living in today's economy. And it's hard enough to make it when you're working. It's a whole thing entirely different when you have job insecurity and you're in a position where you lose your job entirely. Quick anecdote. My son has 3 roommates. They live in New York. And in the course of his 5 years being out there, the only person that hasn't lost their job is him. He's the only person. And so that shows like anecdotally 3 out of 4 jobs in his household were lost. And so imagine the economic strain that causes. And so what ended up happening is he ended up having to come back and stay with us for a while. And thankfully, the type of job he has, he could work remotely. It's a hybrid type of a position.
Do you mind sharing the industry?
He's in tech. And he works for a multinational company. And his other colleagues that he's a roommate with, one is a major retail company, and the other 2 are in the tech space as well. And so it's interesting that, you bring up the fact that people are losing their jobs and this whole idea of job insecurity, it's a real challenge. And so I think when we talk about the whole idea of where the economy is shifting, you asked about recession. Are we headed towards that? I think if you look at the cost of food and you look at the lack of housing and you look at the amount of jobs that are lost and you look at job insecurity because of AI, we can talk about recession being 2 consecutive downward, cycles in the stock market. I think that's a sanitized definition. I think if you ask everyday people, do you feel better off this time right now than you did last year? And do you feel better off that time last year compared to the year before? I would say overall, there's a downward trend. And I think you could take that same downward trend and go back 10, 15 years, because again, our children, so I'm Gen X, our children is the first generation in over a century, in over a century at least, where our children would be better off financially, economically than we were. And I think it speaks to an overall problem that we need to begin to address. And that address is we have to find other ways to be even more productive, to be able to find ways to cut down the proliferation of these price hikes that are going out of control relative to the amount in which people are getting paid. And we've got to really find a way holistically to address that domestically. And I'll end with this. I think when we talk about tariffs creating manufacturing jobs, I don't think that's the answer. We've talked about that on previous episodes. We have to find other creative ways to be more productive. I think we need to look at more incentives for small businesses to be able to pay their workers a fair wage, but without having to lose their ability to have excess buying power. And what I mean by that is if a car this year is $5,000 more expensive than it was last year, but my pay only went up by $1,000. If you take that and aggregate it out, the quality of my life is going down over time. So we are in a recession based on that definition. And so I think we're already in one.
I think you're absolutely right. And I don't want to use any of the traditional, well, these two times and these things happen in the two markets, like you said, but here's the reality. All fiat currencies go down, but this is pretty interesting. In 1930, $1 would buy you 30 Hershey bars. Okay. In 1929, $1 would buy you 10 rolls of toilet paper. In 1933, you could buy 10 bottles of beer with $1.
Wow.
$1 for 10 bottles of beer. In 1944, you could buy 20 bottles of Coca-Cola. In 1953, you could buy 10 bags of pretzels with $1. In 1964, you could buy a drive-in movie ticket. In 1971, you could buy 17 oranges. In 1987, you could buy 2 boxes of crayons. Crayons are like $8 right now. It's ridiculous. In 1997, you could buy 4 grapefruits. In 2008, you could buy 2 lemons. 2020, 1 McDonald's coffee. Today, you know what $1 gets you? 1 packet of great value gummy worms.
Wow. And that won't be the case 1 year from now.
No, it will not. It will not. It will not. And that is the crisis that people face today. And I think it was something where, like, if you look at the average baby boomer with the average household income and the average expenses during their time, their peak time, it wasn't all easy and sunshine and rainbows for them either. They still had like a deficit of like $200 or $150, $80 a month or something.
But that was with one income.
Right. Today, when you compare it, there's a deficit of $2,300
with 2 incomes,
with 2 people working. So you're like, how the heck? And then that obviously further erodes the family unit. 2 parents raising a child. You have daycare. And daycare is really a big cost for a lot of people. But I think right now we're at this precipice where, again, we have technology and we have economies that are trying to converge, that are converging on old moral beliefs and cultural beliefs and different tribal things that are still very real, that will never allow those things to fully integrate. And you're seeing that backlash. You're seeing that. And people are frustrated. People are very tense. They're very frustrated. They are extremely. But what I can say is I'm extremely proud of the fact that there wasn't any widespread craziness when SNAP was delayed. That was pretty encouraging to see that, considering it was. But I could definitely tell you that you just kind of get a sense that it's like, you know what I'm saying? And I think that there is tension. But there is also that opportunity on the table right now where it's, with the job cuts and everything, it's mostly tech. We'll see if there's going to be a bubble. I mean, Michael Berry's really putting his reputation out there a lot on that. There's a lot of big names that say there isn't. Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, is like out there full in force in front of it. So he is putting the receipts out there too. But we'll see, what happens. We're in a different landscape. So maybe the methodology he's using is not the same as it was, or doesn't apply to today's market as it did. But you still can't help the fact that you've got the same 5 or 6 big companies that are all swapping the same money amongst each other.
Mm-hmm.
They're all buying. So but people do need relief. People do need relief. And I know Trump was talking about considering pushing it to extend affordable health care, which isn't that the subsidies that the Democrats killed themselves over with the government
That's exactly what it was.
Is he coming in and doing an Uno reverse on them and stealing their thunder and going to come in and say, look what I go good. Len, you'd be so happy if he did that, right? And he was successful at it. And we go, look what Daddy got you. Daddy's bringing home the bacon right now.
Yeah, that's a funny topic because, okay, on the one hand, he does take the thunder by extending it, but on the other hand, I believe the reality is he doesn't have another plan that's better, and so
I don't think anybody has it. Well, I gave a great plan. Deduct it from my FICO or my self-employment tax if you're claiming it that way, or my Social Security deduction. Give me a tax credit no matter what. Right?
Yeah, okay. So what's going on right now with that whole thing is that the White House, they have this draft and they're talking about, they're going to extend the ACA subsidies for 2 years. And so we're talking about 26, 27 and a new income cap for subsidies. And it says one with the options that are around 700% of the poverty level. And so to me, I have a feeling that Trump recognizes that there is no better plan in place right now. And, I think when you could look at that 2 ways. One is you could say, okay, well, the Affordable Care Act really was an effective way to reduce the cost for healthcare, and it gave more access to more people to have healthcare. And because it was so effective, he didn't have any other options. Because
let me stop you right there for a second.
Okay.
Let me ask you this question. Okay, before you go in more to affordable healthcare, did affordable healthcare just slow it from becoming more expensive? So if we didn't have affordable healthcare, would healthcare just have been more expensive than it is today? Did it just prevent healthcare from getting more expensive? So do you understand what I mean?
I understand what you're saying. There's two layers. Go ahead.
Affordable healthcare passed what in 2009? When it's been around for a long time, right? 2010, 2011, right? Sorry, around there.
I can find out.
I want to say is when the game changed, right? Has healthcare not continuously gotten more expensive every year since it's been implemented? It has.
Yeah.
So my biggest question, and I remember back in my working days, I remember every year.
It was signed into law on 2010, March 23rd, 2010.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense because that's right when everyone was going, oh, you can't sell health insurance anymore because there's no money in it. Right?
But it didn't take effect until 2014. So it went into law 2010, passed on 2014. So it's been a little over 10 years.
So I always remember getting hauled into the HR meetings every year and going, hey, congratulations, your health. In fact, I remember the guy who talked to me, he's Tom Kirsten. Here, sign your new benefits package. Congratulations. It went up by $280 this year. It's the world we live in. That was back in 2002. So my question then is that once affordable healthcare got passed, healthcare continued to go up every year like it has been. So my question is, before we go back even more into why affordable healthcare is so effective, is the most effective part of, and I'm just asking for clarity because to me it hasn't made healthcare any more affordable. Has it just slowed the increase of the price every year? Because it still goes up every year. So without affordable healthcare, it would be 20% more expensive today than it really should be. I'm just guessing. I don't know.
Okay, good question.
I don't know if you know, Len. I'm just like,
so
do you know? I mean,
I do have an idea. I do. I have an idea. So there are two elements of the Affordable Care Act that changed the landscape of healthcare. And one is that there were people with pre-existing conditions that didn't have access to healthcare. So one thing that the Affordable Care Act did.
Now that is important. I will sign off and say that should have been its own separate piece of legislation, because you shouldn't throw someone out automatically with health insurance. Now, life insurance, I get.
Sure.
But health insurance, bro, this is 2025.
Right, exactly.
Like, we're not going to let someone sick and die when we can afford to build what we build in America. And that comes back to a sovereign wealth fund that should take care of people.
Yes. And so, even before the Affordable Care Act happened, if somebody gets shot or if somebody has a heart attack, hospitals by law can't not take care of you. They can't go and perform surgery and try to save your life. The issue was more for chronic health conditions like cancer and things like that.
You shouldn't be dinged against that. So, for example, if you're born autistic, that should not be a knockout for you. Now, if you have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease because you have cirrhosis because you drink every night, that's
different
for you, right?
I agree.
Right. But that I agree with. The figure that out, that should be its own separate piece of legislation.
Okay.
Sorry, man. I just thought it was more important to kind of dissect that as you were going through it.
Absolutely. So one was giving more people access to care. The other part was subsidizing the cost of care. And so the reason why the Affordable Care Act was so controversial is because one side of the aisle was saying this is costing too much money to subsidize health care. And because of that, it's going to add money to the deficit. It's going to be another entitlement program, and it's going to be like a runaway freight train. So to answer the other part of your question is that healthcare does continue to go up, because just like the cost of food goes up, the cost of, a doctor's wages goes up, the cost of the medical related device or machinery and all of that stuff. So all of the costs that factor into what we call healthcare, which is the whole ecosystem of providing care for someone else, all of those costs go up. So that doesn't stop it, but the subsidies stop the rate in which the costs go up. So if those subsidies are therefore removed, now people don't have that buffer to be able to have a lower or lesser impact of the cost. And now they're facing the full brunt of all of the healthcare costs. So what that does is, if I'm spending more money on my healthcare, and we're talking like the basic essentials. We're not talking like cosmetic surgery. We're not talking about, concierge level of care. Really, the whole purpose of affordable care is to make it more affordable for the masses. And if you remove that, then they're going to end up having to pay significantly more. And so the problem is that because of the size of the country, because a lot of people, what they do as they try to compare us to like Norway and Finland. Well, they have fantastic care, but they have a fraction of the size. You can't, the scale changes the delivery system.
Dramatically.
Right.
I remember in business when I was being brought up in business, one of my first mentors in business, and she was telling me, she taught me scale, and she was teaching me unit costs. I was like, oh, let's get these chairs. She's like, we can't get those because you got to understand that we have to buy 150 of them. And so you got to look at all these different things in your run. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's right. Because it's great. We get these awesome chairs if there's 10 of us. But because there's 30 of us, we can't get them anymore. We have to scale things. So you're absolutely right. You can look at that stuff in a different country, and it just doesn't work over here because of the scale of things.
That's exactly right. And so in order to solve that problem, and when I'm talking about the problem, I'm talking about not only affordability, I'm talking about access, I'm talking about the quality of care, but then also monitoring the people in the industries that impose these hefty prices, because, the cost of surgery is astronomical. It can get into the millions of dollars. It costs tens of thousands of dollars just to have a baby. And so for insurance companies, if they're having to pay these exorbitant prices, so if I'm a doctor, let's just take it down so we can break it down. So let's say I'm a doctor and I want to game the system. And I have the ability to operate with a large group of doctors, and together we can game the system. So what we say is, okay, pharmaceutical industry, instead of charging $10 for this pill, charge $100 for this pill. You get kickbacks. I get kickbacks, and we'll pass the cost over to the insurance companies. So we don't have any built-in incentive to lower the price, because you can so somebody who's uninformed could say, okay, well, we're in a capitalistic system. Why don't we just allow the markets to compete? Well, the problem is that the cost for care isn't typically borne out of private pay. We typically get it paid through our employer, who has group insurance. And so the insurance companies are footing the bill. And so because insurance companies are footing the bill, then it doesn't incentivize doctors, surgeons, pharmaceutical agencies, people who make beds and all of the other medical, furniture and devices and all that. It doesn't incentivize them to keep their prices low, because the cost isn't borne by the individual. So there's a glitch in that system. And because of that, it allows all of this greed and the desire to make a ton of money on certain products and services, because other companies are going to bear that price. But ultimately, we pay the price because our insurance premiums go up, our co-pays go up, and all of those things happen. So it's this negative reinforcing cycle. And so to be able to have a plan that attacks all of those fronts simultaneously is very, very difficult. And the Affordable Care Act so far has been the best way to attack that problem in America. Now, we don't have a better care system than Norway and Finland. They pay a lot more in their taxes, but because they have a smaller population, they get better care and they're not having to deal with the same types of challenges. So far, there isn't a better system. And I think there's room for it, but right now it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think America is great at acute medical care, and that's it. And when it comes to holistic planning, pre-planning, preventative care, we do not. We are. But again, that goes hand in hand. It's a package deal with our system. And the way it is, look, you have the right to do whatever you want. So if you want to go drink alcohol every day, you can. And that, I don't want to go back into it, but that again, I take a very libertarian view on substance like that, for alcohol and drugs. Like, dude, if you want to let someone do cocaine, let them do freaking cocaine. Prohibition is a very strong argument. For why
you can't legislate morality.
Stuff. You know what I mean? Because look what happened when you had prohibition. It didn't work. And ultimately they made alcohol legal. And obviously alcohol is still controlled in a certain way, right? But you could still, look, the government's sending people and giving methadone needles anyways. Why do we still have it? Why is it? I've said this before on this show. Just legalize the crap and control it and collect the tax revenue on it. Well, what are we doing here? But again, we lose one of our distractions or one of our moral wars to throw resources and a champion behind, which is the war on drugs, right? And the war on poverty and the war on healthcare. There's always a war on this. And that's the problem, is there's always a war with politicians. There's never a resolution to anything. Because again, politicians are incentivized to keep their jobs, to create problems, to make them seem like they need more stuff to do. And the reality is we don't. Let Elon Musk do all, and those types of people, and the Bill Gates and whoever you like, whether you're a Bill Gates guy or an Elon Musk guy, because they're both on the different sides of the political arena, right? Whether you're a Bill Gates guy or you're an Elon Musk guy, let those guys create. Let the people that want to put everything on the line create opportunities and jobs for people. Because at the end of the day, if we don't have movers and shakers, we don't have producers, we don't have of the world like in Atlas Shrugged. if you go and read that book, I encourage everybody to read that book. When you don't have people that go out there and create and build, you don't have opportunities for the rest of the people that don't want to go out there and do those things.
So, and just like the DMV, I don't think healthcare should be left to the government, but I also believe that there should be a safety net for people who don't have the capacity 100%. To take care of themselves. And so it's a very difficult idea to tackle. And, because there's different beliefs about how people's care should be managed. And, some people say it should be completely privatized, and other people say that's the government's job and role. And I don't think there's any one right answer. I think it's a little bit of both. I think the government has a role, but I think there should be more private money and private ingenuity that goes into solving the problem. So
I agree. And here's the other thing, and then I'll turn it over to you, Len, for any last words to close this out. Here's my last thoughts on that. You also have the opportunity to go and make as much money as you want and have complete control over your level of care because you have built a fortune for yourself. So that to me is like, if you have the ability to do, that's why America's great, because you could do that. Please make that opportunity and that freedom easy for people. Don't make it harder. Make it easier for people to do that. And because we did. America succeeded because we made that easy. Go frontier, go build, be a net resource to the country, and we will reward you for it. That's what drives ingenuity, supremacy, friendships, country pride, because we did it all together, and we don't have this government trying to take it from us to give to these causes that we don't, whether we think they're noble or not, we should have a choice whether we want to participate in those noble causes. So last words, Len. Yep. I'll give it out to you. It's always a pleasure, sir.
Likewise. I think, yes. So one thing that Chris and I really want to do is we want to inform people who want to be critical thinkers, who want to have the freedoms to go out and live their life, not based on what other people tell them or what other people constrain them to do. And so the reason why we do this podcast is we want to have open debate. We want to have open conversations. We want to have dissenting opinions so you can take what you get out of it, so you can make your own decisions, so you can think critically, because as AI gets more and more mainstream, critical thinking is going to become a commodity, because we're taking our thoughts and putting it into these different programs to think for us. And so we need platforms like this, and we need people like you to think for yourself, to be critical thinkers, to disagree and agree, and don't take a position that somebody has, if you like them or dislike them, and think that everything they say is right or wrong, because that's not true for anybody. And so we really want you to go out, put yourself in a position to go out and earn money so you can have the freedom to make all the choices that make your life better. And so with that being said, Chris, it's always a pleasure having a conversation with you. And those of you out there that are watching this, please feel free to comment, like, subscribe, and tell somebody else about it so we can engage in public discourse, regardless of the side of the aisle you rest on. Take care, everybody.
Len, have an awesome week, sir.
You too, brother.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Family Office.